Most people looking for a side hustle are accidentally building a job, and the crazy part is, they don't realize it until they're burned out, overwhelmed, and still broke 6 months later. But there's this weird little corner of the internet, where people are buying digital assets for $10 and selling them for thousands, not crypto, not NFTs, not some fake AI course nonsense, domains, websites, internet real estate. And what makes this business model interesting isn't just the flipping part. It's the fact that the inventory can actually produce income while you hold it. That changes everything. Most side hustles only pay you when the transaction happens. You drive the Uber ride, you get paid. You edit the video, you get paid. You sell the product, you get paid. But with domains and websites, sometimes the asset itself starts working before you even find a buyer, and that's where this gets interesting. Honestly, most people are approaching this business completely wrong. They think domain flipping is just sitting around buying random names like CryptoMonkeyAI.com and hoping some billionaire startup magically emails them. That's not business. That's lottery ticket behavior. The people making real money in this space think more like investors, operators, and digital landlords. They understand leverage. One of the biggest mindset shifts you need to make as an entrepreneur is understanding the difference between creating income and owning assets that create income. Completely different game. A good domain name is leverage. An aged website with backlinks is leverage. Traffic is leverage. SEO authority is leverage. Once you start seeing the internet like digital real estate instead of social media entertainment, your entire perspective changes. I remember when I first started paying attention to expired domains years ago. At first, I thought it sounded sketchy, like one of those weird internet loopholes people exaggerate for YouTube views. Then I started actually looking at the numbers. Some of these domains already had backlinks from real websites, real authority, and real history. Sometimes years of it. And the previous owners just let them expire. That's basically the equivalent of someone abandoning a commercial property with existing traffic already driving by every day. Now obviously not every expired domain is valuable. Most are garbage, some are spammed into oblivion. Some were part of old black hat SEO networks. Some got destroyed by terrible link building. If you don't know how to evaluate them, you can absolutely waste money fast. Which is why this business rewards people who think strategically instead of emotionally. Because beginners buy names they personally like while operators buy assets other people will pay for later. One of the easiest ways to find opportunities is simply paying attention to trends before the general public catches up. And I don't mean chasing hype after everyone already knows about it. That's too late. I'm talking about noticing industries forming in real time. AI tools, local service businesses, new software categories, emerging technologies, even weird niche industries most people ignore. Sometimes a startup spends millions building a company only to realize the exact match domain they want is already owned by somebody sitting at home who bought it for $12. That happens more than people think. But here's the part people really overlook. Sometimes the domain itself isn't even the best asset. The website is. That's where this starts turning from domain flipping into digital infrastructure investing. If you find an expired domain with decent history, clean backlinks, and existing authority, you can rebuild a relevant website around it. Not copy the old site exactly, but absolutely understand what the site used to be about and use that information strategically. This is where tools like the archive Wayback Machine become insanely useful because you can literally look back in time and see older versions of the website. You can see what pages existed, what topics they covered, and what the structure looked like. Then when you combine that with backlink analysis, you start understanding why the site had value in the first place. This is the part most people skip because it's not flashy. But this is where the money actually gets made. A backlink by itself isn't magic. The reason backlinks matter is because other websites are essentially pointing trust towards certain pages. So if an old article had links pointing to it from blogs, directories, news sites, or industry websites, and you rebuild relevant content around that topic, you can often retain some of that authority. If certain pages no longer exist, sometimes you can redirect them strategically to relevant pages on the rebuilt site. Again, strategically, not randomly redirecting everything to the homepage like beginners do. There's nuance to this. and I'm intentionally not going ultra deep into the technical side here because honestly that would turn this into a 2-hour video. I'll put more detailed instructions and resources in the video notes for people who actually want to learn the process properly. One thing I've learned in business is that surface level information gets people excited, but operational details are what actually make money, and operational details are usually boring. That's why most people never get good at business. They want excitement instead of systems. But here's what's fascinating about this model. While you're holding the domain or website waiting for a buyer, the asset can still produce value. That's rare. You can run ads, collect leads, use it inside an SEO or link building operation, build local business sites, generate affiliate revenue, or use the authority to support other digital properties. Unlike a lot of side hustles where inventory just sits there doing nothing, these assets can potentially cash flow while you own them. That's an entirely different risk profile. Once you understand that concept, you stop looking at domains like lottery tickets and start looking at them like portfolio assets. That's how experienced entrepreneurs think. Not emotionally, mathematically. One of the biggest mistakes new entrepreneurs make is only thinking about the sale. They obsess over exit value, but cash flow matters too because cash flow buys you time, and time lets you make smarter decisions. That applies to real estate, businesses, and definitely digital assets. Another thing people underestimate is repeat customers in this space. If somebody buys one website or domain from you, there's a decent chance they own several, especially agencies, SEO companies, investors, startup founders, and media companies. Once you start building relationships with buyers, opportunities compound. That's how real entrepreneurship works, by the way. Most businesses aren't built on one giant transaction. They're built on systems, relationships, and repeat interactions over time. But social media makes everybody think success happens in one dramatic moment. It usually doesn't. Usually it's quieter than that, more strategic, more repetitive, and honestly kind of boring sometimes. And boring businesses make a shocking amount of money. That's another internet myth people need to let go of. The internet keeps pushing this idea that successful businesses are glamorous, but most real businesses are spreadsheets, follow-ups, systems, customer acquisition, and operational consistency. Domain flipping combined with website development actually fits that model really well because you're building assets instead of constantly restarting from zero. That matters. A lot of side hustles trap people in survival mode because every month starts over, no leverage, no ownership, no compounding effect, just more effort. But digital assets can compound. One domain turns into a website. One website turns into traffic. Traffic turns into leads. Leads turn into cash flow. Cash flow funds more acquisitions. Now you're not just hustling anymore, you're building infrastructure. And look, I'm not saying this is easy money because it's not. There's research involved. You need patience. You need pattern recognition. You need enough discipline to avoid buying garbage domains just because they sound cool. And you absolutely need to learn how to evaluate backlinks properly because spam domains can become liabilities fast. But compared to a lot of side hustles people chase online, this one actually has logic behind it. That's what I care about now, logic, not hype. If a business model only works in perfect conditions, it's not a real business. If the margins disappear the second ad costs increase, it's fragile. If the entire model depends on constantly going viral, it's fragile. But owning useful digital assets is a completely different category because the internet keeps growing, businesses keep moving online. Competition keeps increasing, and attention keeps becoming more valuable. So digital real estate becomes more valuable too. That trend has been happening for years already. Most people just don't notice it because they're distracted by whatever flashy thing social media is pushing this week. And honestly, that's one of the biggest advantages you can develop as an entrepreneur. The ability to focus on boring opportunities long enough for them to become valuable. Most people quit early because the process doesn't feel exciting enough. But wealth creation usually looks repetitive while it's happening. That's the part nobody wants to hear. The people winning long term are usually the ones willing to stay consistent while everybody else keeps chasing shortcuts. And that's really what this business comes down to, not domains, not websites, not SEO. pattern recognition, patience, ownership, and understanding that the internet isn't just entertainment anymore, it's infrastructure. The people who understand that early are buying pieces of it. Everybody else is just scrolling through it.